Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming to the program author Fergus Ò Conaill, and he is the author of Robbie Williams' The Last Pop Star. Before I bring in today's guest, a quick reminder that selected interviews are available at our website, as well as on major platforms like Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and many more. Fergus, how are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
My name's Fergus Ò Conaill, originally from Irish heritage, hence the name. I live with my family in Puglia now in Italy. I've started to become an author later in life as I have semi-retired.
So tell us about your book.
So this book is a first-person voice biography of Robbie Williams, the British pop star, that aims to capture not just what happened in his life, but what it may have felt like for him from the inside. So rather than a standard biography that lists events, it explores the emotional and psychological journey behind him as a public person.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically? Who's your target audience here?
Primarily for people who grew up with Robbie's music, or with Take That, or feel a personal connection to his story. So fans in their 30s, 40s, 50s, mainly female, but not exclusively, but also readers who've enjoyed any emotional stories about public figures, regardless of whether they're huge fans. Anyone who's been fascinated by fame, reinvention, or that gap between your private life and your public identity. I think the book will appeal to people who enjoy biographies with sort of honesty and a strong narrative voice, I hope.
So could you say there's any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that you would say runs throughout your book?
Yes. The central idea being behind every celebrity, I think, is there's someone trying to make sense of their own life, just like the rest of us. Everybody's human. The Robbie story in this telling isn't just about the success or the chaos. It's about vulnerability, reinvention, mental health struggles, and that negotiation, as I was saying, between who you are and who the world expects you to be. I think the book invites readers to see a very well-known figure, but with a new understanding.
So if you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
This book, The Last Pop Star, reflects the emotional cost of constantly performing, whether it's on stage or just in public appearances, and those importance of finding your authenticity beneath that. So readers might recognize aspects of themselves, when you're struggling with identity, self-doubt, reinvention. It's not just a story about a famous person, but a reminder that success doesn't resolve everything in life. It doesn't make you essentially happy. There's a meaning for connection, self-acceptance, growth, etc. That perspective can be reassuring, especially to anyone navigating their own version of life's challenges.
Now, if you were asked to compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
I would compare the book, some people might already know, it would be Andre Agassi's autobiography, which is called Open. Not because it's about the same subject, but because it's a very intimate first-person account of a public life, but a vulnerable person, where you feel like you're in someone's head, the person's head, rather than just watching them from a distance. That book works because it's capturing the psychological reality of fame, and that's very much what I've tried to do in this book. I mean, other obvious comparisons are Robbie's own autobiographical books, but they're ghostwritten by Chris Heath. Those books are well crafted, but they're still mediated through a journalist shaping his voice for publication. What I've tried to do here is be more emotionally authentic, a voice that reflects how Robbie feels to his fans, funny, fragile, egotistical, but it's overall his human voice.
So when did you decide to start writing this book?
I started when I had some free time. So when we moved to Puglia and I semi-retired, I'd written some of it, and I decided to see if I could actually finish the book. I realized that most biographies and even many autobiographies don't actually let us inside the emotional experience. As I said, his own words are often ghostwritten. So what I was doing with this first person narrative is to write a book where you felt as though you were hearing the thoughts of the actual person. Hopefully that's got an inner texture to it. So I wanted to write something that captured, as I said, what it might feel like inside that life, the uncertainty and the humor, anxiety, etc.
So, how did you verify facts versus the myths that are written about famous people?
The factual structure of the book comes from verifiable sources, tour dates, album releases, press interviews, well-documented career points. But rather than chasing the rumors and the sensational claims, I focused on what is publicly known about Robbie's emotional life, which he has spoken about openly. And because his official autobiographies are already there, I can see some of the main life points in his journey, but there's already a layer of interpretation in those books. So instead of pretending that there's one definitive version of him, this book focuses on his emotional plausibility and not just the gossip. Like, what would it have felt like from the inside going through these major events in his life?
Now, what tools did you use to write this book, and what do you feel is ethical in terms of online help?
I start by thinking of the ideas, obviously, the subject and how I would approach that and what would be a unique approach to that person. Shaping the chapters is the next point around that timeline. But I dictate rather than typing the first draft. So I speak the voices because I'm trying to speak in that first person voice. I actually speak, and that's what I use as a first draft. It's much quicker for getting the words down. And then the digital tools I use for editing, spell checking, grammar checking. I use Google for checking the timelines and checking any factual details, but they don't create the narrative or the voice. Ethically, the responsibility is to create a voice in the book that's thoughtful and honest in its intent, but not mechanically generated. I think you have to have that yourself.
So why do you think it's better to write in an imagined first-person voice for biographies?
Because it allows us to access the psychological reality of life, not just a list of events. Fame creates a barrier between the public self and the private self, and readers are fascinated by what lies behind that barrier. First-person narration invites them into that inner space. Again, if we look at Robbie's other books, the I voice that readers encounter was already constructed. So in some ways, an imagined first-person narrative can be more honest because it openly acknowledges its creative role while still being truthful. It gives the readers a deeper understanding of the human being behind that persona, which is ultimately what most people are searching for.
So what's next for you as an author? Are you working on anything new?
Yes, I have been. I'm developing a series of books, I hope, that uses the same intimate first-person narrative approach to explore the inner world of well-known figures. I think it's an interesting way of approaching that kind of biography. Not necessarily just musicians, but people whose public life is often obscure as a more complex private life. So my aim is to build some work that blends biography with emotions, giving readers the access to voices behind the headlines. I'm very interested in subjects where fame, identity, and vulnerability are all in the mix, because those stories resonate far beyond celebrity culture or fan books or ghostwritten books. I think something that is written using that first person narrative is far more interesting.
But what do you feel makes your book relevant today?
Today, we live in a moment where fame is incredibly visible, but it's rarely understood, and where public storytelling is often managed, curated, and sanitized. So Robbie Williams is a perfect case study for that tension between persona and person. This book, I feel, is relevant because it looks behind the performance and explores what it means to live under that constant scrutiny for decades almost, to reinvent yourself and to become more confident as you mature over time. But also you still have that fragile self-doubt. those themes are part of modern life for everybody, not just celebrities.
Have you had any feedback yet from readers?
Yes, some readers have said that the book feels intimate and that it definitely doesn't read like a standard biography, but like being spoken to directly by that person or persona that they've known of for decades. Several people have commented that it helps them feel as though they get a better understanding of the person. And even readers who are not hardcore fans have said they recognize aspects of like their own tensions in life between what you have to be externally to who you are privately. So that is a good response to the book if it connects people in a meaningful way. I'm sure I'll get less complimentary reviews, but I've been lucky so far.
But what's been your most rewarding experience since publishing your book?
Apart from the personal sense of achievement, publishing my first book and getting that out to a wider audience, I suppose it's the feedback, the readers who say that the book helped them to understand him better. That means that my message is getting across, not just remembering the songs and the big moments in his life, but recognizing him as a human being. So I feel as though I've been able to tell the story, and that's been recognized, which is great.
So, did your environment or upbringing perhaps play any major role in your writing?
My background and my age, I think, and the fact that I was brought up in the UK, the same as Robbie, and a similar age, has shaped my sensitivity to identity and self-doubt and the tension between having a public and a private persona. I've always been interested in how people hold themselves together while being watched, and how creative performance can become a coping mechanism almost. So rather than writing from a place of celebrity fascination, I wrote from a place of empathy for anyone who's negotiating all of that. That perspective helped me approach Robbie's story with some kind of humanity, I hope.
How would you describe your writing style?
I would describe it as intimate, reflective, and character-driven. So with a focus on emotional realism. I think I mainly did his voice with that idea of a British guy of that age. So my style aims to put the readers inside the experience rather than observing it from a distance. It sits somewhere between a biography and a memoir, with the immediacy of that first-person storytelling and the discipline of the non-fiction research, which I had to do. The voice has to feel like a lived-in voice of a person who's been through all of this. It's conversational, but without being casual.
Now, most authors have a very specific reason for writing a particular book. What was your reason for writing this book?
My motive or reason wasn't to document a career so much, that's already been done, but to explore the emotional truth behind it. So with Robbie Williams, I felt there was space for a narrative that captured his vulnerability, humor. I mean, he's a very funny guy, contradiction, and that resilience that fans recognize in him. So the purpose was to offer a voice that felt more authentic than authorized, if you see what I mean. Not literally factual in every detail, but emotionally accurate in how it portrays that person.
So, in your opinion, who should buy your book?
The general demographic would be females in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, but not exclusively that, who grew up with 90s pop and who look back with nostalgia or curiosity, or anyone who's interested in biographies about people and the pressures between the public persona and your own private life, that emotional journey.
How can people find out more about you and your book?
I have an Amazon author page. I'm on Amazon, Fergus Ò Conaill. You can find me on my Amazon page.
Could you spell your name for us, please?
Yes, it's Fergus for Fergus and O''Conaill.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Fergus Ò Conaill, and he is the author of Robbie Williams, The Last Pop Star. Fergus, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of the Author Show. Go out there, buy the book today, and please share this interview with your friends so they too have the opportunity to discover our guests and their work. The Author Show can be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com. And whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books to read, The Author Show is a great place to start. Check us daily as we continue to introduce wonderful authors of very interesting books on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.